So this is the House Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. Basically, all of these different charges that are being brought against Trump, they're holding a committee on it to see if any of this is actually true.
Serious issues, and I would note, do not apply to only a subset of employees with certain political views or ideologies. During today's hearing, for both investigative and privacy reasons, the only whistleblower retaliation matter that I can discuss is the one involving Mr. Allen. I'm able to do so because Mr. Allen recently settled his employment claims with the FBI, or against the FBI, with the FBI reinstating his security clearance and agreeing to provide him back pay. Following the settlement, Mr. Allen withdrew the retaliation complaint he had filed with my office, resulting in the OIG closing our retaliation investigation. Mr. Allen also waived any privacy rights that might otherwise prohibit me from discussing our investigation of the claims. As a result, I'm able to discuss with you today the factual details we learned during our investigation, which will illustrate many of the systemic issues that we've seen with the security clearance process. For example, in Mr. Allen's case, his unpaid security clearance began in early 2022 and didn't end until the settlement in June 2024. Most employees in Mr. Allen's situation would find it unrealistic financially to retain their government employee status for over 2 years without pay, which is in tension with the law's requirement that agencies allow individuals claiming retaliation to retain their employment status while a security review is ongoing. There are a number of other particularly important policy issues relating to protecting whistleblowers from retaliation that I look forward to discussing today, including potential legislative issues and potential actions raised in the written testimony and correspondence submitted for today's hearing. And as we seek, all of us, I think, to ensure that the security clearance investigation and adjudication process is never used to retaliate against whistleblowers and people who bring forward, in good faith, claims of waste, misconduct, and abuse. Thank you again for the committee's support, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Inspector. We now recognize Mr. Levitt for 5 minutes.
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the invitation to testify today. When Marcus sat here 16 months ago, the FBI smeared him with the lie that he was a threat to our national security. That lie was repeated here in this hearing room. But 1 year later, the FBI reinstated his security clearance and agreed to restore 27 months of back pay. This amounts to an official admission by the FBI that claims about his disloyalty to the U.S. were false. His clearance should never have been revoked in the first place. And this year, whistleblower after whistleblower from inside the FBI security clearance office has pulled back the curtain on the dysfunction and political bias in the security division. Last week, I sent a 22-page letter to the committee outlining these problems. As that letter details, each and every one of the line-level employees who worked on the review believed Marcus should retain his security clearance. The initial investigator believed it, a second investigator believed it, the first adjudicator believed it, and a second adjudicator believed it. So how did his clearance still get suspended and revoked, contrary to both whistleblower retaliation and clearance adjudication law? High-level officials, at least one of whom is still in the security division, overruled these line-level staff and intimidated employees into doing what they wanted. Division employees lived in fear of a stranger bringing the so-called Kelly cart to their desk to package up their belongings while they were escorted out of the building and fired. And sure enough, of the 4 line-level employees who worked on Marcus's case, 2 of them also suffered reprisal from the FBI for trying to treat him fairly. In fact, the entire leadership of the division's clearance adjudication unit was removed in September 2023, apparently in reprisal for standing up to improper direction from leadership. Empower Oversight is now representing 3 current or former security division employees retaliated against by their managers. This summer, we disclosed to the public that the security division forced FBI employees to rat out their coworkers if they'd ever heard them, quote, vocalize support for President Trump or, quote, vocalize objection to the COVID-19 vaccination.
Interesting. That's getting sketchy.
We now understand that was just one manifestation of the FBI's politicized climate. Former security division leaders like Jeffrey Veltri, who's now running the investigation into the second assassination attempt on former President Trump, has a documented history of encouraging security clearance decisions based on political views and personal medical decisions. He and fellow manager Dina Perkins would often ask in staff meetings whether employees whose clearances were under investigation had received the vaccine. Veltri also suggested Marcus was delusional for being motivated by his sincere held religious beliefs. The tone for this intolerance seems to have been set at the top. In a February 2021 call with FBI managers, Deputy Director Paula Bate made what one observer called a chilling and personal direct threat that there would be consequences for anyone who questioned his direction. Given these statements, how is the American public supposed to have any confidence that decisions are being made at the FBI without personal bias or politicization? Over the past 2 months, since a former president was nearly assassinated and one man was killed, the entire country has seen how critical Secret Service whistleblowers have been to providing even the smallest measure of transparency. Yet those whistleblowers, like all other federal law enforcement whistleblowers, have stronger protections than the whistleblowers at the FBI. As some of you know, fixing this was one of my top goals as a congressional staffer a decade ago. But the House Intelligence Committee has repeatedly blocked reforms in this area. Incredibly, the other prohibited personnel practice laws that apply to the rest of DOJ don't apply to the FBI either. The FBI's internal handbook is the only prohibition on political coercion, nepotism, rigged hiring, and various other merit-based policies. How can you not end up with poor management and managers at an agency like that? OSC, my former agency, investigates the practices in these other agencies with recourse to the MSPB, another former agency of mine. For the FBI, Mr. Horowitz's office is tasked with these investigations. But his office doesn't have the legal authorities OSC does to seek a stay of a personnel action from the MSPB while it investigates. And unlike MSPB, Mr. Horowitz's office can't force the FBI to take any particular corrective or disciplinary action, even if it finds wrongdoing. Congress should fix this 1970s relic of an exception for the FBI and empower OSC to investigate FBI personnel actions with appeals to MSPB and the courts. As a broad bipartisan coalition of groups has argued, including in a letter that we submitted yesterday to the committee, it's also time for Congress to overturn or narrow the 1988 Supreme Court case Navy versus Egan. Because of it, neither OSC nor MSPB review whether a security clearance action was taken as a form of whistleblower reprisal. That should change, especially because it's become the FBI's primary form of whistleblower retaliation. Allowing the FBI to operate by its own playbook for so long has also had other consequences. Just 3 weeks ago, MSPB issued an order to show cause why it shouldn't impose sanctions against the FBI in one case. The bipartisan 3-person board wrote it's difficult to escape the idea that they have no intention of complying with the board's orders. Through the reforms I've outlined, Congress can restore the proper functioning of the civil service of the FBI. Both parties should support these changes. They would strengthen good government in the FBI no matter who sits in the White House or director's office. And while there's no way to erase the suffering endured by Marcus and his family or Garrett O'Boyle and his family and others, the FBI can hold accountable those who perpetrated it, and Congress can turn it into something meaningful by using it as the impetus to finally change these laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt.
I wonder what this whistleblower actually said, and did he go through proper channels? That'd be my first question. But the way he's spinning that, he's pretty much saying they were also getting their clearances suspended for being Trump supporters or not being for the vaccine and all of this crazy stuff.
Mr. Allen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for the invitation to testify today. My name is Marcus Allen. I'm here to speak with the committee about how the FBI weaponized the security clearance process to retaliate against me for protected whistleblower activity. In late 2021, I raised concerns about the FBI director's testimony about the January 6th Capitol riot, not out of political motivation, but out of a duty to truth and integrity. This act, which I believe to be in the spirit of transparency and accountability, led to unexpected and severe consequences. Almost exactly 3 years ago today, I forwarded news articles to my superiors and others within the FBI about January 6th. It was literally one of my job duties to keep my colleagues informed about open source intelligence related to their cases. As a result of simply doing my job, the FBI accused me of promoting conspiratorial views and unreliable information. The FBI questioned my allegiance to the United States, suspended my security clearance, suspended my pay, and refused to allow me to obtain outside employment or even accept charity. This once storied institution, whose initials ironically stand for fidelity, bravery, and integrity, was punishing me for bravely challenging their integrity while they questioned my fidelity. The suspension ultimately lasted for 27 months. During that time, the FBI held my family.
On a side note, you're up to 21 cents now. How do you know how much money I'm making? I can't even see it. I have a little button here that says that I can insert an ad. I have a delay ad button, create a highlight video, add a stream marker. I'm not seeing any of that. I don't know. Anyway, I wonder what kind of articles this guy was sending. Is he sending like the MAGA far right media network that he was sending to his coworkers to make him think that a lot of this was BS and that he was a little questionable? I've gotten 7 ads. Get ad blocker, man. You need ad blocker. Block those ads. That way I won't get a quarter.
Family and me in indefinite limbo, awaiting a final decision. Determined to not lose our home, my wife and I took early withdrawals from our retirement accounts to survive. It became clear that the FBI, with endless resources, the American people's money, was trying to destroy me financially so that I would give up. This is a fear of countless potential whistleblowers who see the personal cost of integrity. There are no words strong enough to describe the impact the FBI's lies about me have had on me and my family. The stress is taking.
This guy was probably sending Biden memes. Probably. Yeah. I could see that, like, maybe like many months ago where you were like questioning if Biden was all there, if he had dementia, if you were sending articles like that out to people. Of course, they're going to revoke your clearance.
Taken a toll on our health, and our children have suffered, traumatized by the thought of our door getting kicked in or dad not coming home. The battle for truth and justice will cost you, but the arduous good is worth it.
Just because they suspended your clearance doesn't mean they're going to kick in your door. That seems a little,
The FBI's restoration of my clearance earlier this year, thanks to the efforts of Empower Oversight and the American Center for Law and Justice, was absolute vindication. It's a point I would not have reached without the prior help of Bigley Ranish and Judicial Watch. However, the experience is also a stark reminder of the system's flaws. It took legal battles, public scrutiny, and patience over 3 long years. No other FBI whistleblower has ever had his clearance restored as I did. Garrett O'Boyle and his family are still suffering in the same limbo we were, with no access to due process and no limit on the FBI's ability to delay and avoid independent accountability. How many other whistleblowers remain silent, fearing the same ordeal my family and Garrett's family faced with little hope of vindication at the end? Despite the stress and uncertainty, I've never once regretted standing up for truth. In fact, I'm grateful for the experience. Indeed, my family and I persevered due to our strength and faith, God's grace, and the sacraments. If you do not worship God, then you will worship something else. You can either serve God or you can serve mammon, but you can't serve both. This has been a purification. While we lost material items, we gained more important things. We've stored up for ourselves treasures in heaven. What we have gained spiritually has far outweighed what was lost materially.
wow. He's getting emotional
John
about
Adams
this.
noted that the framework of our country was built for a moral and religious people, and unfit for the governance of any other. James Madison notes the duty to honor God is precedent, both in order of time and degree of obligation to the claims of civil society. Before any man can be considered as a member of civil society, he must be considered as a subject of the governor of the universe. I recently learned about comments made by Mr. Jeffrey Veltri suggesting I was delusional for believing in and seeking guidance from the Holy Spirit. Mr. Veltri currently serves as special agent in charge of the Miami field office, but at the time he was an executive at Security Division overseeing security clearance decisions. To Mr. Veltri, I say you can insult me, but you should not mock God. It is an insult to the infinite dignity of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it is bad for the health of your soul. This isn't about me, it's bigger. I am hopeful that the truth of what happened will be fully revealed and deter the FBI from doing the same injustice to others. Though the path may be difficult, I must plead with other employees who have witnessed wrongdoing that they find the courage to speak up. You're not alone, nor will you ever be. Psalm 139 says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence?" I've been blessed to be supported by God's sanctifying grace, the blessed sacrament, men and women of goodwill, other whistleblowers, the charity of the American people, prayers and great attorneys along the way, like Tristan and Jason of Empower Oversight. Potential whistleblowers, please do not be silenced by the FBI's mistreatment. We are all here to support you if you choose to come forward. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Equally important is the awareness and involvement of the American people. This is your country. While I feel vindicated now in getting back my security clearance, it is sad that in the country for which I fought as a Marine, the FBI was allowed to lie about my loyalty to the United States for 3 years. Unless there is accountability, it will keep happening to others. Better oversight and changes to security clearance laws are key to stopping the abuses suffered by whistleblowers like me. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Peace and all good.
Thank you, Mr. Allen, and God bless. Mr. Kirshner, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, and members of the committee, good morning. My name is Glenn Kirshner, and for 30 years as a federal prosecutor, I enforced the rule of law without fear or favor and without any political interference in the important prosecutorial decisions I was entrusted to make as a career civil servant and public servant. The rule of law is one of the single most important ingredients to a healthy democracy. Indeed, the rule of law, applied without fear or favor, may be second in importance only to a free, full, and unfettered ability of the people to exercise their right to vote. I served in the federal government continuously under every president from Ronald Reagan to Donald Trump. Beginning in the 1980s, I served on active duty with the U.S. Army Judge Advocate General's Corps, first prosecuting court-martial cases, then handling criminal appeals in all manner of cases, including espionage and death penalty. After 6.5 years as an Army JAG, I left military service and joined the Department of Justice, where I served 24 years as an Assistant United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. The decisions prosecutors make day in and day out, whether to open grand jury investigations, whether to seek indictments, whether to proceed to trial, these decisions and virtually every other prosecutorial decision must be made without any political pressure from anyone. They must be made in an entirely apolitical fashion, based exclusively on the facts and the law. Unfortunately, that is not what Project 2025 has in mind for the United States Department of Justice. When I look at the goals and aspirations of Project 2025, I can't help but evaluate them against the backdrop of what I saw happen to the Department of Justice during the Trump administration. As we sit here, one of Donald Trump's DOJ officials, Jeffrey Clark, is a criminally indicted RICO co-conspirator and co-defendant, together with Donald Trump, for trying to subvert the 2020 presidential election in the state of Georgia. I think back to Donald Trump, after being told by his DOJ officials that there was no systemic fraud undermining the results of the 2020 presidential election, telling those same officials, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. That's a quote from a Donald Trump Department of Justice official.
As a lifelong atheist, that sounded really cray-cray. Yeah, they shouldn't have been insulting his religion. I can understand like his boss being an atheist, but you're in a work environment. You shouldn't be saying things like that. Glenn does podcasts and commentary on law and politics. Is that this guy here, Glenn? How do we go from this guy crying to 2025? Did I miss something? He's drawing from craziness of Project 25 to the craziness of January 6th and how it's all tied together into these evil MAGA Republicans is pretty much where he's going with it.
Thank goodness there were some DOJ officials who thwarted Donald Trump's efforts in that regard. Officials who remained loyal to the Constitution rather than loyal to a man who was determined to retain the power of the presidency by disregarding the expressed will of the American voters. These honorable public servants would not exist in a future Trump administration that implements the rule of law busting principles of Project 2025. And I fear that horrific conduct of former President Donald Trump and his corrupt DOJ officials in his first term will look like a government official fixing a parking ticket for a friend, as compared to what Project 2025 holds in store. Project 2025's overarching goal for impacting the way DOJ goes about its work is to destroy the independence and apolitical nature of the work done by thousands of honorable, ethical, and dedicated civil servants who, in my experience, in 24 years inside the Department of Justice, go about their work in an entirely apolitical fashion and replace them with Trump allies, loyalists, and sycophants. This is a so-called Schedule F approach to weaponizing the Department of Justice. Quoting from some of the truly despicable language that can be found in Project 2025's pages, DOJ is alleged to be a, quote, bloated bureaucracy with a critical core of personnel who are infatuated with the perpetration of a radical liberal agenda and the defeat of perceived political enemies. I spent 24 years inside DOJ. That characterization is dead wrong and untrue.
It's very weird because, like, holding a security clearance is not a guaranteed right. There are different regulations. I know in the military we had our AFIs that would govern special security offices where they could use different things to determine if you can hold your security clearance, you know, things like, are your finances in order? Are you divorced? You know, what kind of, are you seeking mental health? Do you have some kind of crazy issues going on? That kind of thing. But ultimately, it comes up to a determination, at least for the Air Force, from your CISO. They make a call based off of the information that his team has gathered, or her team, and it's really subjective. You can interview that person and talk to them and see if maybe there are risks to the country, but there's not a whole lot in place to say, it's not an equation is what I'm saying. It's really up to that person and if they deem you a threat or not. So you're not guaranteed a clearance. So it's hard to really say if they did need their clearance suspended or not. We would need all that information, but also you could look at the bias that is going to play into this, which is definitely what this hearing is probably for. Obviously, if you lean one way politically and you think that these MAGA guys are terrorists, you know, you're probably going to get your clearance, or you're going to be able to suspend that guy's clearance, you know? There's going to be a lot of bias into this. It really just depends on how you lean and what you believe. And I don't know what way you could really make it fair for everyone, because there's going to be people that think that Trump isn't a terrorist, you know, that kind of thing. So I don't know, man.
As but one example of the dangers to law enforcement independence represented by Project 2025, consider this scenario. Once Donald Trump has his loyalists in place in the Department of Justice, if a report of possible voter fraud is referred to DOJ, Donald Trump's officials could screen or evaluate that claim with just one simple question. Does the alleged voter fraud work to the advantage of Republican candidates, so by extension to the advantage of Donald Trump? If the fraud benefits Trump, his Project 2025 officials can simply decline to investigate, summarily claiming there's insufficient evidence to open a criminal probe. But if the alleged voter fraud worked to Trump's disadvantage, then the investigation could be initiated regardless of whether or not the evidence supported that decision. This is simply a variation on the theme. I don't care if there was no voter fraud undermining the election's results. Just say there was and leave the rest to me and my loyalists in the Department of Justice. If Project 2025 is implemented, there will be no need for a corrupt president to recruit DOJ officials to join his criminal endeavor, as the conspiracy will already be in place. Project 2025's determination to extinguish the independence of the Department of Justice looks a lot like a blueprint for autocracy. I thank you for your invitation to appear today and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kirschner. Gentleman yields back. We'll now proceed under a 5-minute rule with questions. The gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized for 5 minutes.
There we go.
Well, in light of that ranting from Mr. Kirschner and understanding that he has a long history working in the Department of Justice, I could understand why we're in the mess that we're in. We now have the details on what the DOJ is required by law to do, and its intentional violation of the law and the impact that this has had on DOJ employees in the form of the loss of the ability to earn a living and having their lives destroyed. I want to take a step back and ask the question, why did they do it? I suppose for the same kind of reasons that Mr. Kirschner was just outlining, because they have some obsession of something that is actually not real. But they also didn't just violate the law for the sake of violating the law. They did so with the explicit intent of targeting a certain class of employees, and in this instance, those they perceived to be conservatives. One whistleblower stated, quote, that if an FBI employee fit a certain profile as a political conservative, they were viewed as security concerns and unworthy to work at the FBI. I assume Mr. Kirshner has the same viewpoint. Mr. Allen, does a person's political beliefs, and most specifically holding conservative views, disqualify someone from serving in the FBI?
No, ma'am, they do not.
Well, then, based on your experience as an FBI veteran and target of the DOJ's unlawful acts, why do you think this political purity campaign is ongoing inside the FBI?
I'm not fully aware of why they're getting rid of people with more conservative views or potentially not wanting people to speak out at this time, ma'am.
Well, and I think your testimony is that they also are trying to get rid of anyone who holds Christian values and Christian beliefs. Is that your experience as well?
That is my experience, especially when you see the comments that were leveled against me and the findings during the investigation.
So we have the gentleman sitting next to you ranting and raving about this Project 2025. I doubt that he really understands anything about it, but ranting and raving about that, but doesn't seem to be at all bothered by the fact that you were targeted because you were a conservative and a Christian. Do you find that odd?
Conservative is not MAGA, in my opinion. I agree with you. There's definitely a difference between a traditional conservative, which I would think more like a I don't know. Give me an example. Who do you think is like a traditional conservative? I'm trying to think of that one dude's name who recently came out and supported the Democratic Party. So he kind of flipped and he's not really conservative anymore. I can't remember his name. But I don't know. Maybe we could say like Pence. Cheney is conservative. This lady is a nut job. Yeah, I guess we could say Cheney is like a traditional conservative. Yeah, we can go with that. But she's also saying that he was targeted because of his religion, which is obviously not okay. Which, you know, we'd have to look at the records to see what was actually said about that. But that's where I draw the line. Like we're agreeing. Obviously, there's going to be a difference between a conservative and MAGA, January 6er, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I do find it a bit surprising. We shouldn't be targeting groups of people within our organizations because of firmly held belief or any kind of political standpoint.
And Mr. Levitt, beside the violation of whistleblower protection laws, the FBI is also, for example, using First
Mitt Romney is who I was thinking of, by the way. It just came to me.
Amendment protected speech and activity which occurs outside of work to punish its employees. Were the officials involved in this unlawful conduct, such as acting assistant section chief Dina Perkins and assistant deputy assistant director Jeffrey Veltri, punished or in any way held accountable for their violation of employees' First Amendment rights?
Not that I'm aware of. I know Ms. Perkins is still in the same position, and Mr. Veltri received a promotion to the 5th largest FBI office in the country, the Miami field office. According to whistleblowers, that promotion was delayed because he was under investigation for whistleblower retaliation, but that wasn't for the targeting of individuals for their First Amendment views.
Okay, so in this administration, and again, while ranting about Project 2025, in this administration, you can actually violate employees' First Amendment rights and get promoted. Is that what your testimony is?
We have a hurricane coming to hit Florida tonight. My wife's freaking out like, oh, do we need to get water? Do we need all this stuff? So I was trying to mute the notifications so it doesn't announce on the stream.
I don't know why the FBI didn't look at this closer, because again, it's clear that there was a widespread understanding that these were issues being looked at, that these were the considerations. And I know Mr. Horowitz has talked about them not exclusively only targeting conservatives, but all of the individuals that have come to us from these various whistleblowers. There's one counterexample of somebody who wasn't conservative. All the others that we've seen, there was a clear focus on these individuals' vaccination status, their First Amendment views, their political stances, and that seems to have gone, been accepted by leadership of the FBI.
Boy, the FBI has...
I think prejudice against vaccination status is already well known. I can tell you my experience in the military, if I didn't get vaccinated, my ass would have been gone really quick. That's what I can tell you with that.
Really been weaponized against not only the American public, but its own employees, hasn't it?
It's sad. The term weaponization obviously can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but when you see the direct impact on someone's life, like Marcus and his family, to go 27 months without pay, as of today, he still has not received the 27 months of back pay that the FBI committed to give him. Similarly for Garrett O'Boyle, the amount of time they've gone, I think 23 months at this point, it truly has ruined their lives.
Well, what does this actually say about the Department of Justice and FBI and their interest in actually righting the wrongdoing and the unlawful acts that they've engaged in?
It's hard to make those kinds of sweeping conclusions, but I definitely would say that.
So we just watched Tulsi and RFK Jr. talk about how the Dems want to get rid of the First Amendment. Then this guy comes out saying the FBI was targeting people using the First Amendment. Yeah, I mean, it's all right here, man. I think there definitely is some shady things going on, and I agree with Tulsi was saying about the Democratic Party. It is weird as well how you watch the Democratic Party flip, because they were always the free speech party. They were always the like anti-war party. It's weird. Things have changed quite a bit, but that's the way of the world, I guess. At this point, there are hundreds of conservatives are supporting Harris, not because they agree with their policies, but that she won't upend democracy. Yeah, I know there are some conservatives definitely supporting Harris because they don't like Trump. There's a lot of Republicans that don't like Trump. They don't like him as a person. They don't like his character. He's not. His character isn't somebody that you want your children to look up to. But the free speech thing that we're looking at here, that concerns me a lot when it comes to Harris, because I don't think anything's going to change with her. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
The way that you help keep people, you help them abide by good things by having good laws in place. And I firmly believe there's
700 just signed a letter. Oh, I'm with you. I know there's a lot of Republicans that don't like Trump. There's a lot of people in general who don't like Trump.
There need to be stronger laws to help prevent this kind of thing in the future. There have to be changes to protect FBI whistleblowers, no matter what administration or what political party is in power.
Well, and I would agree with that. And Mr. Allen, I'm sorry for what the federal government did to you. I think it's an absolute crime against humanity the way that you were treated. I respect your faith, respect your loyalty to this country, and we all recognize that what the FBI did was wrong. We thank you for being here, and with that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I would just ask, Mr. Chairman, if we could stick to some decorum and not disparage witnesses or characterize their testimony. They're here as guests of the committee, and we should treat all of them with respect.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Paul, can we agree? I just want to make sure we're on the same side. Can we agree that this guy's clearance was suspended unfairly?
Mr. Kirshner, the Project 2025 document, which was drafted by 6 of the former cabinet secretaries and about 140 individuals who worked in the Trump administration, with regard to the FBI, says that the FBI has been captured by an unaccountable bureaucratic managerial class and radical left ideologues. How long were you with the FBI? Your mic.
I was with the Department of Justice, specifically the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, just up the street here, for 24 years. I wasn't with the FBI.
Okay. Are you aware that of the close connection between the United States military and the FBI?
The United States military and the FBI?
Yeah. Well, there's a...
What is he talking about?
I'm sorry, the close connection meaning?
There's a veterans preference for military veterans.
No. Okay, that's bullshit. Just because every job in the government has veterans preference. I don't know what he's talking about here.
Sure, I'm generally familiar with
Why don't I ask
It's stupid.
Mr. Horowitz, anything in your experience indicate that the FBI has been taken over by as they say, a radical left ideology?
We haven't found that, Congressman.
Mr. Kirshner.
Yes.
Going back to Project 2025, The Project 2025 indicates that to ensure the promotion of the president's agenda, the FBI should ensure the assignment of sufficient political appointees throughout the department and throughout DOJ.
Representative, you must have read my mind, because that's the very page of Project 2025 I just opened to. It's specifically page 569.
Let's talk about that then.
Please.
Okay, so right now, and Mr. Horowitz, right now, we don't allow political appointees within the FBI. Is that correct?
That's correct, other than the director. who's
Right, at the top.
Confirmed by the Senate.
That's correct. I'll come back to you on that. So this Project 2025 indicates that they're going to ensure the assignment of sufficient political appointees throughout the department, and not simply replicating what was done under previous administrations and reflected in the Plum Book. This is right from Project 2025.
What happened to the video? They pulled the video. Thanks for the subscribe, though. Definitely got a subscriber there. What the hell happened to the video? Let me see if I can refresh. So why does it say the video is unavailable? Yeah, they put the video on private as we were watching it. These goobers. Anyway, that was a good taste of it, I guess.